Welcome to the Edozo Property Podcast, bringing you insight and inspiration from thought leaders in commercial property and technology. We hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Edozo Property Podcast. Today is a first on the Edozo Property Podcast, as it will be co-hosted by Edozo co-founder and CEO Marcus Ginn. So welcome, Marcus.
Hi, James. Good to be here with you and Sasha and Sam from JLL.
Great. So we'll be discussing the topic of diversity, equality and inclusion in the UK commercial property sector with Sasha and Sam of JLL. And first of all, I'd just like to introduce them because they are very well-known guests in the industry, or very well-known people in the industry, and two big champions for diversity and inclusion in the property sector. So Sasha is the COO of UK Valuation Advisory at JLL, having been in valuation in the valuation team for over 24 years. Sasha is very passionate about diversity and inclusion in the property sector, especially around how to break through the glass ceiling, something she has clearly achieved herself, yet not without experiencing challenges and setbacks. Sam is a registered valuer and an associate director at JLL with 8 years experience in the real estate industry. Sam is also the head of UK and global strategy for Diverse City Surveyors, which provides support services and educational training to BAME surveyors who are members of the RICS globally. I'm super excited to be talking to them. I consider them to be pioneers of this topic, not just at JLL, but within the wider UK property industry. So welcome, Sasha and Sam.
Oh, thank you, James. And thank you, Marcus, as well, for inviting us to this talk. Super excited.
Yes, ditto. Thank you, James. Thanks, Marcus. Thanks for having us. Hopefully we'll have a really interesting conversation that will cover, some great points.
Absolutely. And Sam and Sash, why don't you kick us off with just telling our audience a bit about your roles and your backgrounds. Sam, do you want to kick us off?
Okay, yeah. So I've been in the industry since about 2011. I started my career at CBRE, where I did my APC, and I bounced around a bit. I did a stint at Colliers, BNP Paribas, before finally ending up in JLL, where I've been for about three years.
At what point did you join Diverse City?
Oh, yes, Diversity Surveyors. So I've been with Diversity Surveyors for a couple of years. It's headed up by Bola Abisogan. He's a quantity surveyor, and a really passionate individual, when it comes to diversity and inclusion within the real estate industry. He's been in the industry for a lot longer than me, and he's got, a massive track record. And they provide support, learning, consultancy for individuals in the real estate industry from a BAME background. And, like I said, it is needed because when I first started in the industry in about 2011, there wasn't a large representation of diverse individuals from a BAME background in the real estate industry.
And look, and it seems like you've really found your home at JLL, and especially in the JLL valuation team, because you work with Sasha as the CEO of that business line, who feels really passionate about this. Sasha, could you tell us a bit more about your role and background and how you came to be where you are today?
Yeah, sure. Of course I can. I left school at 16 with little education and then went on to work for a building surveying company. I had to go to work because my parents really needed the money. I worked at that company for 10 years and then joined Lambeth Hampton as also a team secretary, became the office manager. And then in 1998, joined JLL in the valuation team. And there I have sat to this day. Yeah, and I think I'd like to kind of touch on bit what Sam said, and he found mentorship in Bola, and you can really hear that in his story that he's telling us. And I think that's really, really important, that on our journeys from leaving school, and sometimes we find that mentorship in school, don't we? Finding that mentorship throughout our careers is so important, particularly if you feel different and particularly if you feel you don't fit in. And all of my career, even today, I still feel different, and I still feel in elements of my career I don't fit in. partly because I'm a woman, partly because, my social background isn't really accepted in the real estate industry. That social mobility piece is just kind of, we still need to look at that massively. I feel we really have moved, and we have opened the doors on the, balance of gender. And I think after the shocking events of last year, we've now woken up to the need of ethnicity and diversity. But the one area where we are lacking still in our industry is the social diversity in property.
And what are some of the steps that you are taking just as a business, as a department, to change that? Could you chat to us about some of the initiatives that you have? You mentioned mentorship. Is there sort of a mentorship program?
Yeah, there's several mentorships, and we've always had them at JLL, and JLL is incredibly supportive of their employees and their mentorship and driving, their staff forward and upskilling them. We've got the gender balance, and we've also got the race for change, and we've also got the reverse mentoring ethnicity piece that I'm part of. So I've been reverse mentored by a Black lady who sits in a completely different area. She sits within our IT department, and that has been incredibly useful for me to understand what it is like to be a Black woman in the property industry, and how doors have been shut on her, how she's been judged if she's sitting with other Black girls having lunch, and her manager went up to her and said, I don't think you should be sitting having lunch with a group of Black girls. It doesn't look right. But if there was a group of white girls, that would never have been said. And I would not have picked up on this had I not had that reverse mentoring with her.
Right. Yeah, of course. And Sam, are you part of the reverse mentoring process as well? Can you talk from your experience and sort of what you've learned from that?
Yeah, I was doing reverse mentorship with our CEO, Chris Island. This was before he stepped down, and now he's a part of the board. So that was really good, because I got to benefit from his experience, his years, his grey hairs effectively from being in the industry. So, like I said, just coming from a background, a different background, it was good to speak to Chris as a sort of benchmark, and I could benchmark things off him. He could provide guidance and advice, with regards to my career and sort of things that I wanted to do. And then at the same time, I could inform him of, kind of sort of where I was coming from and the challenges that, I was facing that, he could take into consideration. And
what I really like about what you and Sasha are doing, having heard you speak in other forums, webinars, and podcasts, is that you make the conversation easier to have, and it's a really positive thing to be able to do, is to have that conversation, and to people like who might have never had to experience the same things as you, and might not just understand the challenges that come with that. So I think what you're doing is fantastic, because it makes the whole industry just more engaged in the conversation.
And I think it needs to be done, because there is a benefit of having a more diverse representation sort of in the industry, because things are changing, right? Now, it's sort of ESG, environmental, social, and governmental, that's sort of a big piece. So sort of sustainability, social, etc. And I think, diversity plays a massive, massive role. Diversity and inclusion and equality plays a massive, massive role in that. Because I feel people now, they want to be, they've always wanted to be rewarded for merit and not to be discriminated against because of their background.
Yeah, and can I follow with a question from that, Sam? So clearly, from what we're saying, JLL's got a social responsibility to promote diversity, but also it's got a responsibility to the business, it seems, because isn't there a role for a more embracing diversity, helping you to achieve business objectives at JLL? Sasha, we've spoken, as I've spoken with other senior figures in the industry, about the challenge of recruiting the right quantity and quality of people into the industry, and particularly valuation at the moment. Do you believe that the diversity agenda will give you a bigger and better pool of people to recruit from?
100%. I mean, the thing is, every business has to reflect the society they're in. or you're not going to succeed. We have a generation of people that are coming through that environmental and this social mobility means something to them, and they will not join a company if it doesn't look like them. And so that's why we have to have more women. We have to have, we have to have the BAME community inside our business. And I think our leaders and our leaderships are waking up to that. I can really see, particularly on social mobility, there are green shoots coming through. As I said before, at the beginning of this, gender, the door opened on that 10 years ago. We have lots and lots of women in our company now. When I started in the valuation team at JLL, there was 3 women surveyors, valuers in our team. And it's almost a 50-50 split now, and you don't see that happening. You just suddenly go back after lockdown, you're like, oh, wow, there's loads of women. There's loads of people that look like me. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right on that educational piece and making sure that businesses reflect what our society that we're living in looks like. We also need, I think there's a big element about us doing a lot more work in our communities. It's fine to say, our industry, there's not enough Black people, there's not enough Asian people, there's not enough women, but it doesn't seem attractive to the person on the outside. Our young, our grassroots, if you said to them, what's a chartered surveyor? They're like, oh, I don't know. Isn't it estate agents? Do you work in a shop? And it's more than that. The real estate industry has like 25 different arms and legs. It's construction, it's planning. It's, you can work in marketing, you can work in HR, you can work, solely on report deliverables. It's a massive, massive spectrum and really interesting. And I think there's an element of us going out to our communities and saying, look, this is what real estate is. You all live in it. You all work in it. Like, why didn't you want to be a part of it? And I don't think that message is going into the grassroots, into the schools.
And talking about bringing younger people from diverse backgrounds into the business, it seems JLL's already been doing some good work in that regard. So we've met some of your great apprentices, Kyle and Cameron, in the past, from diverse backgrounds that have added such value to your business. Could you say anything about the value of the apprenticeship programme for promoting this agenda?
Yeah, so the apprenticeship programme is probably about 8 or 9 years old, and we've got some really great stories around that of individuals that have really flourished in and coming through the ranks in there. And so we have many apprenticeship schemes in JLL, and it could be on the surveying side, it could be on the marketing side, legal, or the business support. And you're quite right. You worked with Carl Beckford and Cameron Clark for many years when you first started looking at your company, and you had the mapping system. We had a conversation with these 2 individuals who did maps. 70% of their roles was downloading maps, and fortunate for them, I was really, really keen on upskilling them, and what a great opportunity that Edozo gave them to take these 2 young, passionate people at JLL and work with a company, and they helped you build that mapping system.
Oh, they really did. Yeah, that's 2 of the most important people in our early evolution. Yeah.
And Sam, what was your experience like when you first joined the industry?
I don't think a lot of people people from the BAME background are necessarily as prepared as I tried to make myself prepared for it. I can resonate with what Sasha was saying earlier, just about sort of new starters, sort of coming from school, coming from college and from different backgrounds, not really knowing or understanding, the real estate industry. Whereas on the other side, where you've got, individuals coming from Reading, Cass, they're coming into the industry with a, built up network. There is a certain degree of nepotism in the industry. So they are a bit more armed and sort of ready to start their career sort of when they first get in. When I first started, I was one of the only Black people or Black surveyors kind of in the building. I was regularly mistaken for IT. That would happen sort of quite a few times. And then eventually I just gave up and I just said, I am from IT. Let me fix your computer. Came over, turn it on, turn it off. Bob's your uncle. That's it. Yeah, I got mistaken for security a few times. And these just aren't incidents that have happened to me. These are incidents, you could probably ask, anyone from the BAME community, and, they've come across these things. But I think the industry is making strides in terms of recruitment. I think the industry is getting better. There are apprenticeship programs. Firms are looking at different avenues of recruitment, instead of just looking at Reading and Cass and Brooks, they're looking at other avenues to bring in the BAME community. And from when I started to where we are now, I have seen an increase in BAME representation at graduate, surveyor, and up to about senior surveyor level. And then after that, it becomes a bit more patchy. And I think that is a major issue. It's not necessarily recruitment. I think it's retention. I think the industry is having a massive problem with retention and promotion from the BAME community. I mean, when you look at senior members in the real estate industry, they're hard. The numbers of BAME are just really, really, really low. And they've done a lot of work with gender and with the LGBT community, but I think for some reason ethnicity is just lacking. And I think that the whole Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd incident has kind of re-sparked and sort of invigorated that energy and empowered people from the BAME community to actually speak up about these issues. And there have been issues, there have been incidents that have sparked this kind of energy before. But what we've tend to find is that it gets to talk and sort of conversations, and then it just sort of peters out and nothing really happens. So I think this time we need to really affect change, and we actually really need to get the situation sorted out and improved. And I think we can do that. And I think there is a willingness to do that to a certain degree. And I just think that it just needs to happen now.
Yeah. And you touched on there just on the promotional side. And as you say, it's all well and good being trying to have a diverse recruitment policy. But if people aren't moving up the ranks at the same rate or with the same probability of success, that's a huge issue. And how do you level the playing field for promotions when you've got people from very different backgrounds? And if you are hiring from, say, an apprentice level versus a sort of master's degree level, there might be a disconnect in sort of written and presentation skills, as an example. Is there, what can you do? Maybe this is for you, Sasha, as a business to kind of level the playing field in that promotional process.
That's a really good question, and it's a conversation Sam and I continuously have, particularly in the BAME community, and how you get promoted if you're of ethnicity, or if you're a black man or black woman, because it's a really difficult one. For me, I can only speak personally. I found it incredibly difficult to get promoted at JLL. I think partly because I came from the support side and I had no education. I think if I was educated, I would have probably gone through the ranks quicker because I would have had letters after my name or just seen in that light. And I do remember a conversation with one of our senior leaders who's now left JLL, and I've said this previously in a podcast, where I really struggled to get promoted, and I really tried hard. I worked harder. I went to every event. I did internal, profile, external profile. There was nothing I didn't do. I got involved in everything, and I said, like, how do I get to the next level? How do I get promoted? He says, you just won't be. You just won't be promoted. You have three things against you. You're a woman. You're uneducated, and your accent, and that's why I'm really trying to drive the apprenticeship and the graduates and making those changes, and to ensure that we have a really diverse pool of young talent who want to stay with us and have a really solid career. And with regards to promotion, I think we do need to put some sponsorship around the ethnicity part of that, or some help and answer the questions, why can't I get to the next level? There's also a lack of valuers as well, or who are of ethnicity. that's the other thing. And I think there's a grassroots problem. We need to get in the schools and get into the communities and say, this is what it's like to be in real estate. So it's like to be a valuer.
Well, look, and commercial real estate is also commercial real estate for people. Everyone's used to living in a house and they associate property with that. But commercial real estate has always been, even in my friendship group, for example, I've got people from advertising to financial services, and commercial properties are relatively sort of unknown. Office buildings, industrial and property management, they're not things that people know about unless you've chosen it as a career path, really. So it's important to get that word out there. But Marcus, you had something you wanted to mention.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Sam, you've had the benefit of seeing a number of different cultures working at a number of the big brands in your first few years in the industry. Sasha, you've worked at a couple of big firms and obviously you know the sector well. Is it both? Question to both of you. Do you think the problems have been the same pretty much across the industry in different environments? And do you think now that the industry is moving at the same sort of pace across different organizations? Or is there a big difference in the pace that, say, JLL is moving at on this issue compared to some other big firms?
Okay, yeah. So the issue here is that there is a level of resistance to diversity and inclusion that is not being talked about or is not being addressed, shall I say. Like I said before, it tends to be that when issues around diversity and inclusion are brought up, the go-to is let's have a discussion, let's talk. I think to improve it, I think what firms could do is borrow aspects of culture from the tech industry, for example. When you look at companies like Google and Facebook, for example, to a greater or lesser degree, they are more successful in diversity and inclusion because it's more merit-based. It's more focused on, okay, can the person do the job, and can we create an environment for this person or these people or our employees to do the best work they can do? That's their focus, not necessarily is this person, did they go to this college? Do they live in this area? Are they from this particular cultural background? And I think if the industry did borrow more from the tech industry, I think we would see an improved culture that would facilitate more diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, and Sam, we can only speak from our own experiences of growing a tech business, albeit a small one, and that is the benefit our industry, or the tech industry's got, is that it's a bit of a blank canvas. There's no legacy stuff. We choose. We want to be part of the team. I told you when we spoke previously about we've hired apprentices in the past, which has been hugely successful, and we've got across the board a very broad spectrum of skills from a broad spectrum of nationalities and backgrounds. And I think part of the challenge in the property industry has historically been a white middle class male background, and so you come up against that challenge almost instantly, is dealing with the legacy stuff. But on that, you speak to lots of different people in the BAME or BAME community as part of diversity. Are you feeling positive about that? I know there's still challenges to go, but are you feeling really positive that this is moving in the right direction?
I mean, at surface level, yeah, okay. Yeah, we are moving in the right direction. However, deeper, when you dig deeper, things aren't changing. So from that perspective, I'm not so confident. I mean, there's a lot of tokenization and virtue signaling happening at the moment. But in terms of real change, I can't really see it. I mean, until we see more senior people from a BAME background, until we see people from a BAME background from the real estate industry in senior positions, then yeah, I mean, I can't really see it.
Yeah, and the importance of that, if young people see senior leaders that are like them, it gives a level of motivation and hope to come into the industry. And I think it makes the point even more important to have senior leadership from diverse backgrounds, because younger people can look up and go, that can be me. I associate with this industry because there's an opportunity for me to progress.
Sasha, clearly you're hugely passionate about this agenda, and I infer that JLL is too. How is JLL leading around diversity?
Yeah, I think JLL really are leading the charge in this. So firstly, we've got a new COO who started in April, and she's a woman, which is fantastic. Stephanie Hyde. We've got our Director of Diversity Inclusion, who is Claire England, and she has been groundbreaking in this arena. So for me, I'm kind of leveraging off such a great work that they're doing. But for valuation, I think for us, we've written our strategy, we've got our action plan, and we've got some really tough points in there that are making a change for us. And I think two of those I'd just like to highlight. And I think if as an industry, if we took some of these on board, I think we could actually drive change. And the first one is that no job is to be offered unless there is ethnicity has been interviewed. And that's made a real big impact for us. And that actually puts our recruiters, our talent acquisition teams' feet against the fire a bit to go and find that talent and bring them into JLL. And secondly, the interviews are not to be done same sex. They're to be a man and a woman, and not to have two men interviewing a woman or two women, etc. That's made a really big difference. And that shows when when we're undertaking these interviews, we're trying to get new people in of diverse background. We need to show that when we open the door. It isn't about that first interview is so important, because although we're interviewing them, actually they're interviewing us. And do they want to come and work for us if we don't look diverse? And that's really important. The other thing that valuations are doing is that we're offering we offer all our pictures and instructions will have a diverse team. And so we have a responsibility to make our team reflective of the society and the clients we're working with. I mean, that's incredibly important. If we are working with a client, a very diverse client, and a lot of companies are now, this is really at the forefront of what they're talking about in their boards. If we are then going to go and send in, 6 white male from public school, privately educated, I don't think that's going to cut the mustard for a lot of our clients. And also as we go forward in the Generation X, that's not going to cut it. They will want to see diversity. They will want to see a change of gender. The religion comes into this, and the social mobility, all of those characteristics. We need to ensure that we have a blend of those in every single team we have. And I'm proud to say that JLL are driving that forward, and we're making great achievements in that arena.
Yeah, well, you mentioned earlier, Sasha, that a previous manager of yours highlighted your sex and your accent. I've got a friend from Yorkshire that went to work in the city 20 years ago, and her well-meaning boss said exactly the same thing. She's remained a woman 20 years later, but you wouldn't know for a moment that she's from Yorkshire, because she's molded her accent to fit with those around her. But surely success is everyone being able to retain their individuality and their differences and be respected for what they are, rather than have to conform to what they think they should be.
And that's where we want to be. That's where I would like to be. And for me, I've had to adapt. I looked around me and there were young surveyors going on skiing holidays, off to summer holidays in Barbados. I couldn't even afford a holiday, with 2 very young children. And so I've always had to adapt and just kind of not show my true self. So it is, that's where we want to be, Marcus. But we're so far away from that. And I think if you said that to a young black man and said, look, why don't you come in the office, be who you are? He probably, it'd be really incredibly difficult.
What advice would you give, starting with you, Sasha, to someone of a similar background to you, wanting to start out in the property industry now?
I think for me, university was never on the table, really. It was just not an option for me. But I think if you don't want to go to university, that's fine. Seek out those apprenticeships. If you want to learn on the job, it is a fantastic way to do it. You earn money while you're learning, and then you can get your degree and then become RICS accredited at the end of it. I mean, that's great. Seek out, those mentors if you can. That's incredibly difficult if you're 18 years old and don't know our industry.
To a certain degree, I would say practice resilience and mental toughness. If you're coming into the real estate industry from a different background, this is where the messaging can become confusing, because they set it up like, racism and discrimination and these things don't exist. And it's, if it does exist, it's just one bad apple in the bunch. And it sets people up to think that way. So when they get in and things do happen, it's a big problem. And I think people just need to be realistic about the situation. Don't get me wrong, things are improving and things are getting better.
And crucially, I'll probably add to that, is speak to people in the industry, or preferably you, Sam, who lean on people and mentorship, like we mentioned at the beginning. Seek out mentors which can help you through and help you with that, building up that resilience, especially when you're a young person joining a job for the first time. So I'd like to ask a personal question to each of you, just as a final thought to leave on a positive note. And that is, where are you at your happiest? Sasha, starting with you. Where are you? What makes you tick? Where is Sasha at her happiest?
My happiest with my family. I've got 2 grown-up children. I've been married for 30 odd years, so I'm happiest in the heart of the home, and that's kind of me. And
Sam, where are you at your happiest?
With family, James. Family. I'm most happiest with family, catching up with my brother, my mum, my cousins, my auntie. I'm not a huge fan of Christmas, but I do love the fact that we all get to gather around and just catch up with each other and share stories and just be close. So family.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, look, you the way you both speak is so passionate and powerful and impactful, and I'm humbled that you came on the Edozo Property Podcast to talk about it. We've certainly learned a lot from it, and I know lots and lots of people will do too, especially all our listeners. So thank you for that. All that passion will have a huge impact.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Marcus. Thanks, James.
See you soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Edozo Property Podcast. To find out more about Edozo, please visit edozo.com or follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter. Links are in the show notes.